All right, I had chapter 4 summary, and the chapter was called Word Solving, a Critical Component of Vocabulary Learning. And the very first sentence in the chapter starts off by saying, word knowledge is one of the best predictors of comprehension, which I found really interesting. I didn't have that part of my working definition of comprehension, and I didn't realize, how important word knowledge is, just in general, to have reading comprehension. I just didn't think about that. And the one interesting thing is that we know that simply telling students what words mean does not ensure that they learn them. And basically, it goes on to say how one of the worst approaches to teaching vocab is having a student figure out the definition of their own. Where I've seen it, I know I've probably told kids, I know as a student I was always told to go figure out the definition. If I didn't know a word, go look it up. Well, what happens is it's one of the worst approaches, this book said, because they might go look up the word, but then they might find the wrong usage of it or the wrong definition for that word since they have so many multiple meaning words. So that was interesting. Then it goes on to describe that we need to teach vocab and we need to be able to model it. So teachers can do this modeling by modeling word solving strategies using one of the three following systems: the context clues, word parts, and resources. The book goes on to describe them in greater detail. Then it also talks about in the chapter we need to focus on where words live in the brain, the importance of words, deep vocabulary instruction, selecting words to teach, and a systematic approach to word learning. And again, the book goes into great detail on each of those topics, but I'm going to hit on a couple. The where words live in the brain I found really interesting. It gave lots of detail of where the words are found in your brain, how we store them, and it was quite interesting how they said that the words live in quite a few places in your brain, but not necessarily in a simultaneous kind of pattern. And there's a whole network that fires up similar to plugging in a strand of Christmas lights on a Christmas tree. And some specific parts of the brain are the Wernicke's, I think how you say it, Wernicke's area, located in the temporal lobe, and that's responsible for comprehending language. And then the Borax area is in the frontal lobe, and it's given the job of producing speech. And the Wernicke's area develops first. And this is kind of common to when we say someone, if you're used to toddlers, they're going through the terrible twos, meaning that they're able to understand what's going on, but they can't necessarily express it. So that's when you get the kind of the confusion and the tantrums, and when those two areas aren't kind of jiving together. And it goes on to say some other examples about the importance of words. And I thought this was neat. Growing a student's vocabulary requires a nurturing of teachers across each grade level, as well as the time and experiences needed to foster vocabulary development that is independent of the teacher. For example, you need to teach, or a student's going to come across 88,500 word families in their high school career. By the time they reach high school, that's a lot of words. So therefore, we need to always being willing to foster them. The one really neat study they had was they did 42 families, and they made monthly visits, and these families represented a wide range of social economic backgrounds. They were assigned to one of three categories: welfare, working, and professional. They discovered that by age 3, the vocabularies of children ranged from 500 in the welfare families to 750 for working families to 1,100 for professional families. And that's a direct correlation to the numbers of words spoken per hour to them in their household. And that's huge. That just goes to say that we have so many kids coming into us that aren't read to at home, or the spoken language isn't as frequent at home. So therefore, the average kid could come in with a 600 word deficit before kindergarten. So that, speaks volumes for we need to get kids into early literacy programs and into reading. It goes on to explain more about selecting text and good and mistakes that teachers make when teaching vocab. But in a nutshell, it just said that word modeling is an important component of vocabulary learning.
Okay, I had the chapter 5 summary for the book. It was focused on text structures, guidance for readers that facilitate memory. The chapter broke down into 4 different areas and it went into detail. One area was what makes text considerate. Second area was what is working memory and how can we reduce demand on it when reading. The third section, what is the relationship between working memory and text structure? And the fourth area that it broke down into, how do we facilitate long-term memory? I'm going to talk about each of those categories a little further, like the chapter broke it down. Selecting considerate text. There's 3 overlapping features of text that contribute to comprehension and learning: structure, coherence, and audience appropriateness. And I'm going to break each one of those down as well. For structure, it broke into 5 different areas that should be consistent in each text to help memory and learning comprehension. One area was description. It's a list of information. Another area, compare and contrast. It's noted similarities and differences between 2 concepts. The third one, temporal sequence, how events change or remain the same over time. The fourth one, cause and effect, the causal relationships. And the fifth one, problem and solution, a solution or issue and how it is resolved. Selecting texts that include these characteristics helps students read for information, helps them learn the information, understand the information, and remember the information. The other part, coherence. There's 5 features there. Number 1, the main ideas can be explicitly stated in the chapter openings and in an obvious place as each section begins. Number 2, the information found within a paragraph or section can be clearly connected back to the main idea. Number 3, the events should have logical order and events and topics should have obvious relationships between them. Number 4, the text should provide readers with clear references and not use ambiguous pronouns. And the 5th one, topics should transition smoothly, and that's to help, once again, to help the students remember. The third one there is audience appropriateness, a measure of how well text matches the student's probable background and prior knowledge, which we know are 2 important considerations when considering text difficulty. One of the other main categories of the chapter, reducing the demands on working memory. This describes the function of a portion of memory that retains information for more than a few seconds. The working memory is the key difference between the word-by-word reading of beginners and true fluency, the point at which decoding, vocabulary, and comprehension work together in concert. And the other main part of the chapter, facilitating long-term memory. There was a quote in here that I really liked. It kind of broke it down and made it simple. The advice on how to get students to remember what they have been taught is the same advice given to the musician who wanted to know how to get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, kid, practice. Students are not going to learn how to activate strategic moves in their reading through a few exposures. They need the modeling of an expert to demonstrate how to use text structure to understand the relationships between and among concepts. They need to practice and practice the right way over and over and over again, and they're gonna remember, they're gonna learn, and they're gonna trigger that long-term memory. And just practice over and over is gonna help them activate the strategic moves like it talks about.